Hey everybody, and welcome to the PC Gamer Show. My name is Tom Marks, assistant editor here at PC Gamer. As always, joining me today, Mr. Evan Lottie, editor-in-chief. How you doing, Evan?
Hey, Tom.
And from afar, again, we welcome back Stephen Mesner. How are you doing, Stephen?
Hello. I'm doing really well, thanks.
Welcome. We're glad to have you on again.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm super excited.
Yeah, so we got a good show, too. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about Overwatch. For a very long time, Evan is very mad about Overwatch, or specifically one of its characters, or a couple maybe.
But maybe not for the reason you might think.
Oh, whoa. What a switch up! This is now you got to stick around and find out, right? Mm-hmm. This is how we get people.
Doctors hate them.
Yeah, exactly. This is the podcast version of clickbait right here, guys.
Hey.
But we'll also be talking about Halo 5 is now going to be playable on PC, which is also the most deceptive thing I can possibly say about that topic.
Oh my God. You're really selling our good headline practices here, Tom.
I know. Halo 5's Forge will be coming to PC. The game will not be coming to PC, but you will be able to play Forge levels that you've made, testing them on PC maybe. So we're going to talk about that.
And why that's a good thing.
Yeah, let's just get all the how Halo Forge's 5 coming to PC is like, what it could learn from. We're just going to go all through the headline stuff.
All the BuzzFeedisms.
Yes. We'll also be talking briefly about Total War Warhammer, which came out this week, very recently, and is very exciting. And then finally, we'll also be talking about Oculus Rift adding a sort of DRM-y thing to their headset, and then it causing piracy to be easier, which is unfortunate. And we will jump into that because that's a weird, complex topic. And then, of course, we'll be taking your questions from Twitch chat, as always, as we do every week. But first, let's start the way we usually do with what we've been playing recently. I'm going to start this one because I have a game I'm actually really, really excited to talk about, and I think that pretty much now playing is just going to turn into the Overwatch section pretty quickly since it came out 2 days ago. But I've been playing a game called Turmoil recently. I got a key for it over the weekend, and I was kind of interested. It's been in early access for about a year now, and it's this oil tycoon game. It's 2D. It's very cartoony. Cool. You start out with a big plot of land, and you can't see anything underground, and then you have to hire dowsers and moles and scans to find the oil in the ground.
I just love digging in games.
It's really satisfying.
I love digging.
Yeah.
I don't care what context. That's awesome.
Just dig.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Don't you want to just poke at the earth and have that happen?
Do you only like digging in video games, or do you just go back with the shovel every once in a while and just go nuts?
I mean, if I have to bury something, sure, but otherwise.
Oh.
Yeah.
Treasure.
It's a weirdly satisfying thing.
Chiefly treasure.
In real life or games, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. But Turmoil, get it because it's oil at the end. And it's a fun little game. You vie for land, you fight against these other NPCs, and it's been, like I said, it's been in early access for a year, and then it's coming out officially on June 2nd. So it's leaving early access on June 2nd, and that's what made me want to try it. And it's cool. It's a small little thing, but it's one of those fun games you can just kind of lose yourself in a little bit, because it's broken up into levels. So you get a fresh plot of land, you suck all of the oil out of it in probably a 10 to 15 minute long level, and then you move on to the next plot of land. Which is kind of saying it out loud makes it sound totally grim and awful. But
I don't know if you lump this in, but I feel like Minecraft has just spawned all of these engineer-friendly games, which I think is terrific. I mean, I'm not that kind of person. I booted up Factorio, and within 10 minutes, I was like, I'm out. Respectfully, I respect what this game does and what you can do with its incredibly intricate systems for building assembly lines and stuff. I think Chris Livingston, one of our writers, wrote last weekend about this 500-hour Factorio map. It was just this insane, crazy factory. You could hear that, that theme that they play in old cartoons. It's do 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 do. You could just hear that going off in the background.
All the factory assembly line scenes. It was Bugs Bunny.
The essence of that.
Yeah.
But those games aren't for me. But I'm so glad they exist. Kind of like EVE Online.
Huh.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a cool one though. If people like little games like that, look it up. Turmoil, like the strife word, but with oil.
I'm going to, because as an Albertan, which is the oil capital of Canada, I am all about digging for oil and exploiting the landscape.
Great.
So the game sounds like it was probably paid for by our government, to be honest. It's propaganda.
It's like there is a snowy area in it, so I don't know how snowy Alberta is. I just kind of assume that all of Canada is snow.
I was about to say, I think you've bought into the lies that we spread to stop people from coming here, so that we can just enjoy our paradise. It's actually quite tropical.
Yeah, I mean,
I was gonna say you guys call yourselves the Great White North, so
I mean, parts of Ontario are certainly more south than parts of the Pacific Northwest and stuff.
Yeah,
that's right.
I don't like thinking about that.
Yeah. Welcome to the PC Gamer Show, talking about Canada geography.
You can't hide from geography system.
We gotta play a geography PC game one day, and then we can talk about geography, and it'll make sense.
Oh, you know what would be the best one? I think it's called GeoGuessr.
Is that the one where it drops you in a random place?
Yeah. So it's fabulous, right? It just uses Google Maps data, and you're looking at a map, and you're looking at a
like a street view.
Street view, thanks. 360-degree view of a random spot, and it's just like the side of a road somewhere. And you're sort of like, okay, well, I'm looking at the cars. I'm trying to determine what models they are, whether they're European or American or whatever. But it's amazing how you're like, oh, shit, that's not Kansas. That's Turkey. Just moments like that. And you were like, oh, wow. Like globalization and your realizations. I really want someone to build that in VR. I mean, you're going to need extremely high definition imagery, but I think that would be just an amazingly fun kind of like party experience. It'd be like the ultimate trivia game or something.
Yeah. That'd be really cool. I want someone to build that in like Skyrim, right?
Yeah.
Or Skyrim VR. So it just drops you in a random place in Skyrim, or in an MMO with like a huge world, and you have to look around the area to figure out what part of that region you're in.
That's a great mod idea.
Yeah. It's actually
EVE Online. There's just like a lot of stars. You got to look at the constellations, figure it out.
Can you actually do that?
Oh yeah. EVE Online has like nebula in the background, and they change according to where you are in the universe. So like
I had no idea.
Yeah, like you can tell where you are in certain parts of the universe depending on what the nebula is, and like it's all realistic. So like you can see other nebula from different regions that are off in the distance, and they'll get closer as you get closer to them.
That's crazy. I had no idea.
Neato.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you two, has anybody been playing any games that they want to talk about besides Overwatch? Or
I can continue to reflect on Doom.
Yeah.
I'm still finishing up Doom. I'm sort of taking my time with it, but just absolutely delighted by it. I think one thing I'd call out that maybe few people are talking about right now is I didn't expect to love the voice acting and sort of be, I don't know, enamored with my character and just sort of the lore of the world. I mean, it's really kind of cheesy and over the top. I mean, from the get-go, there's a big computer screen that says demonic invasion in progress within the opening seconds of the game. It's openly winking at you, But the way the voices are mixed is super mysterious and creepy. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that you find these artifacts, and the artifacts kind of read out little bits of basically codices, like codex entries, out to you about the lore and the world, sort of. And they're really disturbing, and they emanate from a specific place in the world. So if you walk away, they get quieter and stuff like that. But Samuel Hayden, who's kind of like the scientist or researcher, I guess, that you're working with throughout the game to kind of help you, it's so perfectly captured because he's like super bassy, unsettling, the way it's mixed. So it's sort of like it's reinforcing along the way that, like, okay, you're working with this guy, but he's got different intentions than you. You're ultimately on your own. This is a solo kind of experience and game, which Doom absolutely is. You have to kind of pursue your own violent intentions, and it just reinforces that so nicely and elegantly.
Yeah, it's not a game you'd expect to, like, the story isn't like it's not a story game, right? But the thing I really appreciate is that it doesn't try to be anything more than it needs to be, right? It doesn't try to, like, pretend it's this big epic drama. It's just like, kill some demons. Here's some things to hold it together.
It really bothers me when I'm reading about the new Doom, and people, like, every once in a while you'll see someone say like, oh, Doom knows it's like a big dumb shooter, and I hate that people are calling it like dumb and it's like in their mind they're thinking, oh, it's dumb because it's not trying to be smart. But I'm like, that's what makes it smart, is that it's not trying to be smart. It knows perfectly where it sits in like the echelon of shooters, and it fills that position perfectly.
It wears the dumb title with pride.
Yeah, don't call it dumb. It's smart. Doom's real smart.
What about you, Steven? And you've been playing anything, or is Overwatch consuming your life also?
Yeah, now that it's out, it's been consuming my life. I've actually, when I'm not playing Overwatch and I have time for other games, I've been getting into Path of Exile. Which is like a really old game. Like, it's been out for, well, not old, but I mean, it's been out for a number of years now.
Developed in New Zealand.
Yes, that's right. It's if you're not familiar with it, it's basically a Diablo-style action RPG, loot-based. And so like I've tried to get into this game so many times over the years, and it never really clicked with me. And then they have a new league coming out, and it's a pretty sizable update. And they do these really interesting things with their leagues, where every 3 months they start a new league where everyone starts new characters, and they have these really interesting design quirks that really influence sort of the core of the game. And this new one that's coming out sounds really interesting, where you're basically having someone prophesize over you, and it affects the RNG elements that happen. And so it's really unique. And so I've been getting back into it, and it finally just clicked with me, where I'm starting to like understand how the skill tree works, because it's kind of like the Final Fantasy X sphere grid, where it's huge and really intimidating. And yeah, like Path of Exile is a fantastic free-to-play game. If you haven't tried it, like, I totally would recommend everyone sit down with it if you can for even just a couple of minutes and see if it's something you'd be into, because I'm loving it. But then there's Overwatch now, so
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, but, as I think we're leading now into Overwatch, not to do the transition for you, Tom.
Please do it.
Good segue.
You're the one with Chief in your title, man. Come on.
Thanks. But it is interesting to me. Like, it was really occurring to me in the moment of, launch evening. They had a worldwide launch for the game. It was 4:00 Pacific, which I think is very unusual. But it went well. There was like maybe 15 minutes of downtime.
Yeah, no, it was about 15 to 20 minutes that nobody could get in, and then suddenly just everybody could get in.
But it really got me thinking about, I don't think we want to spend too much time on this, but there is a threshold, sort of this like social peer pressure threshold of like, X amount of my friends are playing this game, and I hear X amount of people talking about it on Facebook or wherever I pay attention to. So gosh, I really feel compelled to get in there, or else I'm missing out on something. And that was like one of the dominant feelings I had about Overwatch. Not like, oh man, I can't wait to play this character that I'm really excited about, but like, I can't wait to play with Tom, Tim, Chris, like our gang basically, and even people that I haven't played games with in like a year or two, because I know this is a game they're playing too.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I was excited to jump into it live, because anybody who listens to this podcast is probably bored of me talking about Overwatch, because I've been playing it since, the beta started in like October or November, so I've like been playing it on and off since then, and the game isn't any different now that it's live, really, but the difference is at 4:20 or whatever, 4:25, whenever it went live, my friends list had 14 people or something instantly playing it. And like, that has never happened to me in the entire time of the beta, where I had multiple different groups of people who were all like, oh, let's play Overwatch. And I'd been used to, signing on and being like, I really want to play, but there's no one on. And the game is so much better with friends that was really exciting, and it made me want to jump back into it even more. Steven, you were in the beta as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so did you kind of feel that pull in the same way, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like the Blizz, like Battle.net has been a client where I'm the most disconnected from like a social circle. And last night too, I had this moment where I looked, and suddenly I had all of these friends, and like even the day like leading up to it, I had all these friends that were like, oh, like we don't have each other on Battle.net. We need to get on Battle.net together. And like everyone was talking excitedly, and I just can't remember the last time that a game like unified my circle of friends so absolutely, where everyone was like, oh, we need to make sure that we have our Battle.nets exchange, like our IDs exchanged. We need to make sure that we can play together. And yeah, like it's weird. It's exciting almost. Like I definitely feel the draw, the pull.
Yeah, it's so. But let's since we have talked about, the game in general. I think most people are familiar with it right now. It was obviously incredibly popular. 9.7 million people joined the beta.
Right.
Let's talk about some of the things that, I guess, bug us now that, because I think all three of us at least are enjoying the game, right?
Yeah.
And it's been getting a lot of good review scores in these early reviews. Obviously, I think it must be people that have reviewed it already have been doing enough of their beta experience, because it is pretty similar. We'll have a review from Phil Savage over in the UK, I think later this week or early next week. So keep an eye out at PCGamer.com for that. But, Evan, you put out a piece today that when I said, hey, Evan, you want to be on the show, this was your reason for wanting to this week.
I love grousing. I love a good complaint session.
So let's talk about the salty elephant in the room, which is Bastion.
Sure.
And everyone's gonna in the chat either think Bastion, the turret guy, is either mad OP and needs to get nerfed right now, or you're gonna think more like I do, which is he's really, really strong. He's really oppressive towards kind of newer players, but can be pretty easily countered with the right kind of coordination with your team. You have a totally different, not take on it, but you were focusing on a very different thing in this article.
Yeah, and I think I come at this from a TF2 player's perspective. That's what people compare Overwatch to a lot. That's what Blizzard compares Overwatch to some extent. They're very different games in a lot of ways. Overwatch is better in some important ways. But yeah, there's been a lot of discussion around Bastion as a character, whether or not he's overpowered or underpowered even, some folks think, I guess more experienced players, which I don't think even necessarily have more valid opinions than anybody else, but a lot of them feel like, oh, he's easily countered, he's, easily flanked and stuff like that in these situations. But my thought is why do we care so much about whether or not Bastion is overpowered or not? Because he's not fun. I don't think he's fun to play. I don't think he's fun to play against. I don't think he creates fun for other players on the server, which is, I think, one of the most important things for any character to do in a game like Overwatch or any competitive multiplayer game. It's about what interesting connections and relationships that character's abilities and strength and personality inspires across the entire experience. And the comparison I made to TF2, on paper, if you look at TF2, if you played TF2 in 08, 09, you remember, before it was a crazy game laden with, the demo man who had a sword and a shield and stuff like that, and all this crazy stuff. It was much more vanilla, right? And the sentry turret had even more of a central role. It was the absolute linchpin for defense. In a lot of maps and a lot of points, you'd have a couple sentries that would stay there the whole game, practically. Depending on your defensive configuration, depending on and that would be a good game. It would just annihilate people, and that would be a fun, interesting game because TF2 is much more about attrition and long attrition battles where you're just making inches of progress over 20 minutes, as opposed to Overwatch, which is a 10-minute full game. So, on paper, TF2 Sentry Turret, which is kind of an ancestor to Bastion in some ways. It could instantly track you. It could juggle you in the air. Other people could repair it for you. There are all these kind of on paper advantages that it has over Bastion. I know that's an apples and oranges comparison, but it was powerful in any sense of the word. It was immensely powerful. It basically instantly killed you unless you ubercharged. But what the turret did, it made TF2 more fun because it was powerful. Spies had something that they had to sort of, create a technique around how to effectively sap a turret without getting destroyed. You could separate the engineer from the turret. That became sort of its own sort of sub-tactic on offense. Working together with another engineer was pretty interesting in terms of how you take care of each other's stuff while the other guy runs back to get more metal. Demo men had to learn how to lob grenades and stuff like that. And Pyros had extra utility because they had to figure out their air blast was one of the best counters to people who were Ubering to attack and destroy sentries. So what I'm saying is on paper it was this very powerful thing, yes, but it was fun and interesting because it inspired all these different ideas and tactics and maneuvers within the game that themselves I think were pretty fun. Bastion doesn't do that. like if you think carefully about what Bastion does, and it's still very early in despite the very long beta period, it's very early in Overwatch's meta. So I'm not just like judging it now and saying it's going to be this way forever. But if you think about what Bastion does, he provides like a big target for snipers. Genji's deflection ability is very useful against him. That's what most people would say is a hard counter. Reinhardt is kind of effective either in combination with him on offense or defense. I don't think that's a very interesting play, but nevertheless, it's something that exists. And I guess you could say Bastion, maybe more than other characters, encourages you to change your role. I don't know. Like, whether or not that's fun to you is kind of up to you. It's not super fun to me. A character that just forces you a little bit more to change to somebody so that you can kill him and then kind of proceed further. I mean, really, the character is a big roadblock, a big uninteresting roadblock. And I think, like, the biggest issue is not actually his damage output. I think that's not a problem at all. It's that he can heal himself. Right, so Bastion, again, if you haven't played Overwatch or this character in particular, you hold E, and he just sort of like welds himself back together. It's actually fairly quick. You can't fire while you're doing that, and you can't move while you're doing that, but you don't have to seek out health kits. You don't have to communicate with your medics or support characters to get healing. And
you can do it while sieged, so you don't even have to move.
Yeah, so basically I feel like Blizzard just made him heal himself in order to give him something to do during downtime, because otherwise he's just waiting around for people to kill, and that's not fun either. So I don't know. I'm not saying like, oh, throw this character out of the game, but like clearly this is something that they should continue to iterate on and think about how can they interconnect Bastion with the other identities of these great characters. I think the rest of the characters are pretty excellent, across the board. And again, Tom, you reminded me, which I actually forgot about this, like in a video Blizzard published a year ago or so, and presumably during the beta, I can't remember.
Yeah, it was right before the beta.
Right before the beta, so pre-beta. When he sieged, he gained a shield that was 1,000 hit points, and it regenerated instantly. And in like the video I linked in my piece, he takes, he deploys in a doorway, he's just kind of plucking away, and he's totally ignoring a Junkrat who's lobbing grenades at him, and all of them are like colliding directly or like detonating right near him. It's like 10, he like takes 10 direct grenade hits, okay?
Yeah.
And he just ignores them, and the shield doesn't even drop.
Nope.
And I mean, I think it's absolutely fine for developers to experiment and like, let's try like the most extreme idea possible and then like whittle it down from there. I think that's an absolutely valid way of designing something, and that might have been what they were doing here. But if you think that Bastion is overpowered, go back and look at that video, because holy smokes, are you wrong? If you look historically about how they've iterated on the character, this is the weakest version of that character we've ever seen.
And I mean, I think the important thing here is that they took away that shield not even because it was OP, because even at that point, Bastion was considered strong at high level play, strong at low level play, weak at high level play, which is exactly what is considered now. So that wasn't the problem. It was that they took away the shield and they reworked him a bit so that he'd have to work with his team more, so that if you wanted that shielded Bastion, you had to have a Reinhardt to do it with him, sort of thing. And I think that what you're saying, I agree with to a large extent, is that like there isn't enough of that. There's not really enough of a reason for Bastion to work with his team, and it becomes tricky that way. I don't have a problem with him as much, but that might be because I've stopped seeing him as much when I play. And so, like, I can ignore the problem to a certain extent. I'm really curious, though, to see if people just stop talking about Bastion in 2 weeks, because that's kind of what happened in the beta. Is after a little while, people were just like, okay, and Bastion wasn't played, really. I mean, he still played at low levels, but it's
interesting. I mean, it's a very hard thing to measure. I think with any, if you're looking at comments and stuff, it's inherently a difficult thing to capture what the reality is, unless you have Blizzard's data to kind of back it up and how many players are using Bastion and how successful they are and stuff like that. But even when we just tweeted out our article, 30 minutes ago or so, I got a lot of people being like, "Oh, yes, he is OP, absolutely." People seem to be unhappy with him, and those may be new players who are just kind of encountering for the first time. But Steven, what are your thoughts?
I think, like, for me, I wonder if Bastion is almost this symptom of people not embracing the hero switching enough in Overwatch, because I think when I'm playing Bastion, I never play him for the full round because he becomes pointless after once the team knows that a Bastion's there, they adjust the strategy and it's really pointless to continue playing as him. And I think he can be a pretty interesting hero for people to almost set up ambushes in a way where the other team doesn't realize that one of the heroes has switched to Bastion, and they make a hard push and they just get rocked by him. And then as soon as it happens, you switch out of Bastion. Like, I think he's almost contextual in a way where you can't just play Bastion for the whole round. And then there's, like, I see people playing Bastion on, certain modes where it's just like, I don't know, like, whatever the mode is where you're both fighting over control points can be like a really, there's times where it's just really not a good choice to pick Bastion in that, because like to get him set up and to be defensible is not a lot of fun. I think I definitely agree with you though. And I think for me, like the big tell that there's something kind of wrong with him is that the synergies he also has are just really boring. Like when Reinhardt just, sticks up his shield and sits in front of him and then Bastion just destroys the enemy team, like that's not an interesting synergy at all. Compared to like you have these beautiful moments in Overwatch where like I watched a video the other day where someone was a Mercy and they got knocked off the edge, and then they so luckily managed to use her angelic flight or whatever it's called to save herself. Or I've seen people, they have these moments where something just clicks and they don't die. And it's kind of this beautiful, like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I could do this. But with Bastion, all of his interactions are just, oh, Mercy's going to sit with me and give me the damage buff for 5 minutes, and I'm just going to take pot shots. Or Reinhardt's just going to sit in front of me. And those are really the only two interactions he has with the entire team. And it's not fun. It's not exciting or interesting. It's just sort of like you're just pressing a button and then, being rewarded for it. And I don't think that's great.
And I mean, going back to what you were saying about hero swapping, because I think that's a big thing, is people are going to treat this like a MOBA to start, and it's not that at all. And Blizzard has been very clear about the fact that they don't want to limit hero switching in any way. They don't want to limit how many heroes you can have on a team in any way. They want these things to be core parts of the game. And it took a really long time in beta for people to get used to that, and it's going to take probably a while out of beta for that. I mean, we had a game, even team comps are just being weird. We had a game, Steven, you and me and another one of my friends were playing, where we loaded on one of those control maps, and immediately,
the Hanzos?
Yeah, 3 of our team went Hanzo. And we were just like, what? It's a control point map. You have to stand on the point. And we lost.
Real salty.
Yeah, we just lost instantly. Like, they captured the point as quickly as they possibly could, and then they did not give it up, and then we didn't get overtime, and it ended. And it was like, oh, great, thanks.
We steamrolled a team of all divas last night as well.
And they didn't even try to switch.
They were joking around. They were having fun.
Yeah.
And that's actually, if we want to transition off Bastion and stuff, but like, that's another topic here where, again, it's a TF2 comparison, and these are different games. I don't think they're as similar, even as Blizzard was sort of saying at the outset of like the announcement of the game as they were. They were like openly citing it as an inspiration and whatnot in interviews and stuff like that.
They're paced so differently.
But the pressure that Overwatch's very short clock creates is, I think, kind of a blessing and a curse, depending on what game you want to play, depending on what kind of shooters you like playing, what kind of social experience you like. I think most of the modes, I mean, it's sort of a max of 10 minutes, not including overtime. Like, that's if you take, down to the second of the time it takes to capture every objective along the way, I think.
I think they were saying that in beta, the average time for the payload and capture point game modes were like 6 to 7 minutes, and the average time for a control point game mode was 9. So it's quick.
So I mean, we had like a 4-minute game last night where we just got crushed.
Yeah,
it happens. But I think when we fought those 6 divas, they were just committed to it. We pushed through them because diva doesn't do a lot of damage. It was funny, but unlike TF2 and arguably other games, like there isn't sort of that room to play and experiment as much, because I feel like I look up at the clock, and in most situations, I've got 2 minutes or less to get a job done and to be effective. I have to execute. I have to fulfill my role. I like that pressure as a competitive player, but what's missing is that kind of feeling of hanging out. You know what I mean? And it's hard to create both of those things. TF2, you could argue in the same way, it's way too long. Oh God, it's such a game of attrition. 30-minute rounds. Are you kidding me? I'm just throwing my body at this objective over and over and over again. I respawn 20 times. People end up with 150 kills in a round, based on the server settings or something. Is that fun? I don't know. Depends what kind of game you want to play. But I'm curious if you guys have any particular feeling about just the shortness and kind of how compressed Overwatch is as an experience.
I really like it, but I also agree with you that it doesn't allow for much creativity. There's a lot of times where we get into skirmish mode between rounds, and I'm just dicking around on Widowmaker or something like that, who I never play otherwise, and then it launches into a game, and I'm like, aw, I kind of liked just skirmishing for a little bit. So I agree with you there, but I generally really, really like the quick game modes. I like the fact that if you're getting destroyed, it does not last very long. And I like the fact that I can drop in for a game and then just stop playing if I wanted to. Although that, as Steven was pointing out last night, that's a little difficult to just do one.
No.
There's the Pringles effect a little bit of just one more.
Yeah. Which for me, I honestly love that. As much as the adult in me is oh my goodness, all of my responsibilities are being pushed back because I can't stop playing Overwatch right now. I think it gives it a fantastic pace. And I think that there's a lot of benefits to, not being stuck in a game where if your team's really bad, you're not having to feel like a jerk because you want to leave because you're not having fun, which is something that there's nothing worse than being stuck in a game where your team is just bad. They're not cooperating. Maybe there's toxic people in there, but if you leave, you're going to get punished for it by the game mechanics. Maybe they'll drop you into a lower ladder or something like that. Eventually, or you'll get they have all their different solutions. But to only have a 6-minute game, if I'm not having fun, I'm just it's very easy for me to be nah, well, this will be over in 2 minutes. Not a big deal. But I do agree. I think it would be fantastic if they just included, almost if they just made skirmish its own mode where you could just sign up. It puts you in a server. There was no objective. You're just there to blow stuff up and have fun and maybe just mess around with heroes and stuff. And then, it doesn't have to have a purpose. It can just exist. And then you could almost do it as an experiment and see what people do, because people might create some really interesting things if you just throw them into a server for, as long as they want to be in there and there's no objectives. They're just killing each other and having fun.
It's almost a game, too, that wants to be drop in, drop out as if it had a server browser, and then punishes anyone who does that, right? Because it's so quick, you can't, in TF2, if there's a terrible game, or any other shooter with a server browser and longer game modes, if there's terrible people or you don't want to be playing this map or whatever, you just leave and come back in. And in Overwatch, it's specifically you're allowed to do that, and it really doesn't want you to in any way, shape, or form. If you leave, if the more games consistently you play, you get a bonus XP for doing games in a row. If you leave a game towards the end, they kind of get mad at you for it. If you join a game that's already kind of close to being finished and you lose, it doesn't give you the loss. The game is very much set up to be don't leave, finish these rounds, do this, but it also just lets you drop in, drop out at the same time, which is weird to me.
I mean, anecdotally, I guess I've played all the nights since it's came out, so that's 6 or 8 hours or something. That system is completely successful in my experience. I've maybe had one person leave in 40 matches or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And compare that to, say, Rainbow Six Siege, which I played 150 hours of. People leave almost every game, unless it's ranked play, in which they leave maybe 25 or 30% of the time. It's a massive problem in that game. And yeah, the rounds are much longer. But either way, I'm really glad for that here.
And even when people do leave, I find that they it almost instantly replaces them. Like lots of times I'll see someone left the game and I'll go to check on which team it is to know whether or not we're going to be at a disadvantage. And by the time I check, the spot's already been filled. So, I mean, and that's probably just because of the nature of the fact that everyone and their mother right now is playing Overwatch. How do you guys feel about the game modes? Do you think the game modes that they have in there right now are interesting enough to sustain it for very long? Or do you think it's eventually going to get to a point where they're going to need to start, like, from the way I look at it is it's almost a bit of a letdown to me that they have all this fantastic charm and diversity in their characters. And then the game modes are all just really sort of basic, like the same stuff that, you know, first person shooters have been doing since forever.
I enjoy what they have. I think payloads maps, like pure payload maps, are just the most boring thing compared to all the others. Even more so than like payload maps in other games. Like I think the payload just feels like it moves so slow, and it's so easy to stop it. Be just like putting like a Reinhardt or a Roadhog just at the tip of it, just not letting it move when you're on defense. It's just such it's not a very fun strategy, but it's a really effective one. I mean, there was that strategy with D.Va for a little while that they changed slightly in the beta, where when the payload got around that final corner on Gibraltar, going right towards the last point to win the game, you could have like 3 or 4 people on your team switch to D.Va, and because she would never die, she'd just pop out of her suit, they'd never be able to push the payload because you'd always have somebody on it, and then as soon as you died and respawned, you would just jet boost out of the spawn and go right back to it. So I think payload's a little boring. I really like the control mode. I think also the key here is that although the modes might be a little meh, the map design really, really suits the characters that they've made, which I like.
Personally, I feel like there's more vertical space than there are characters who utilize it. I feel like a lot of times I'm like just looking up and I'm like, oh, if I was Pharah, I could get up there. If I was Widowmaker, I guess. But otherwise, I mean, I know there are a couple like wall crawling characters. Hanzo
and Genji can both
yeah,
climb walls.
Otherwise, I don't know.
Junkrat can.
So that's.
Or he can't climb walls, but he can concussion mine himself.
5 out of 21. That's like a quarter of the folks who have hops, so to speak. But I don't know. I feel like you would benefit from some jump pads here or there or something. I'm not suggesting that you just tax this kind of stuff on, but I don't know. I think there's a case. You know, you could make the argument that weird modes, like super novel weird modes, where like charging batteries and stuff, like Lawbreakers is doing something like that, where both teams charge a battery and then anybody can steal it and run away. Haha. But I feel like, you know, it's a case where there might be too much new stuff or weirdness kind of on top of weirdness if they went in that angle. But at the same time, yeah, I think 6 months from now, certainly, like, people are going to start to kind of hope for something more, something different. Really curious to see if they're going to add in some kind of horde mode. I know we were speculating on that, I think, last week or the week before.
Right.
That'd be fantastic.
Because they have, you know, you can play against AI bots in there. They're really pretty simple to shoot through. It's really a thing for total beginners, I think. But yeah, I think that's something for them to expand on potentially.
BattleTank09 in the chat mentioned attack and defend maps that have several stages, like in TF2. I think that would be a really cool thing to see in terms of making longer modes rather than, you know, bigger, crazier maps or changing game pace or whatever. I think it'd be cool to see, like, a 2 or 3 tier control map. So instead of a 6 to 7, or not control, excuse me, capture point map, because instead of a 6 to 7 minute game, you'd have maybe like a 15 to 20 minute game. I think that'd be cool. I think that'd be a nice little, you know, maybe a different queue that just is like slightly longer game modes. That'd be a really easy way to do it.
I think what would really like endear me to Overwatch for the long term, the long haul, would be if they, and I think they have a foundation to do it, but I think if they treat Overwatch the same way that Blizzard's been treating Heroes of the Storm, and being sometimes almost like subversive to the status quo of MOBAs, like I think that's what would really make Overwatch a game that I could see myself playing like 5 years from now or even longer. if they, as long as they don't just get kind of locked into the one thing they're doing right now. I would love to see longer game modes. I would love to see different types of game modes, those types of things. I don't know.
So you're asking for weird stuff like Cho'Gall in here, which
not necessarily like Cho'Gall, but like I think when I think about what they've done with the map design for MOBAs, and like they have these interesting concepts for all the maps in Heroes of the Storm. Like I think that would be something really interesting I'd like to see. Maybe I do want to see a Cho'Gall. I want to see a first-person shooter where it's one person controlling it and one person shooting. That would be interesting.
Panzerg in the chat, in a similar thing, asks, have Blizzard announced future plans for Overwatch yet? And not specifically, yes and no. They said that they're going to be adding the first big content update to the game would add ranked play, and that would come probably, but not definitively, sometime in mid to late June. Jeff Kaplan said, I don't want to say a time, the game director of Overwatch said, I don't want to say a time or a date because we'll almost definitely not hit that time or date if I say it. And so he said probably end of June. I'm going to say end of June, beginning of July. They'll probably do a content update. And I think that'll, like you said, Steven, really set the tone for, okay, what is Blizzard doing with this game? Are they just going to add ranked play in that June update? Are they going to add a new character too? Are they going to add new maps, new skins? Like, how often are they going to update this game? And I think so far all we've heard is they're Blizzard and they're going to do their Blizzard thing and support it, but we have no idea practically what that means besides ranked play and the fact that new maps and skins or new maps and characters will be free whenever they may arrive. Mm-hmm. But I think we've talked about Overwatch for a good amount of time now.
I would love to talk about other characters.
Okay. Let's talk about other characters, man.
Yeah, because like people complain about Bastion. That's been the meme for months.
You gonna bring up Mei now?
I'm gonna bring up Mei. Yeah. I'm gonna bring up McCree, which I think there's kind of some emerging discussion around. Mei, of course, the sort of cold version of the pyro in a sense to TF2. She freezes characters, gets in close, and then she has that icicle gun, which good range, great damage. You can headshot with it. She's all about like stun you and shoot you. Is it frustrating? Is it imbalanced? Is it not fun? Maybe the more important question to play as Mei or to play against Mei.
I think it's fun because I think Mei is both mine and Steven's favorite characters. She's definitely mine. Oh my God, I love Mei.
Mei is bae.
Mei is bae. She is. She's just like, she is the trolliest character in all of Overwatch. She's the only character who, as you're running out of your base to go to the defending point, you can just put up a wall and trap all of your teammates and spawn, and then
love that.
spam emotes at them while you're doing it, and it's hilarious. But I think she's fun to play against because she represents something that no other character does, which is her right click is long range, but she's a very short range, like, CC machine. She's crowd control in a first-person shooter, which is really weird, but she just represents this kind of small area where you can't get near and you have to kill from afar. And if you can burst her pretty quick. It's not like she's got too much health, but then she also has that super trolly, oh, look, I'm invincible in healing, which is hysterical. Oh, my God, I love Mei.
Yeah, I've seen you pull some crazy tricks with that where, it is pretty fun to, like, turn in that ice block at the last moment. You get a little bit of health back, but you come right back, and they're frozen, and you headshot them. Like, that's a really cool technique. I do think she's fun to play against. I don't have a lot of complaints against Mei. It's occasionally, frustrating to get frozen. You're like, oh, shit, I can't do anything. Doing nothing, like not being able to interact, I think really irks some people in games. It's just like they're opposed to it really fundamentally, which I understand. But at the same time, I think the urgency she creates where you're like, okay, I get a sense that I'm being frozen. I can hear this kind of like, frost sound effect in my headset. I got to hurry up. I got to drop like my ult. I got to do something to counteract this. I got to get in a better position where my teammates can help me. And I think that urgency is good. It's a good sort of interaction of like, oh shit, I can't let her get closer. I need to like push her away. Pharah has an ability to do that. So there are some interesting interactions there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you touched on that because I'm actually one of those people who I find getting stunned in Overwatch to be insanely frustrating. And I think it's just a symptom of being a first-person shooter where the control is so direct, and to suddenly have that like removed I find almost kind of staggering in a way, and I think I'm getting better at it. Like, I think I'm starting to acclimate. But when I first was playing Overwatch, especially, and you mentioned McCree, like McCree's flashbang was driving me insane because it just shuts you down and you can't do anything for a split second. And if he has like a full chamber, he can just, he can kill you, most heroes, in one shot. And it's funny because like in other MOBAs, I don't have a problem with being stunned, but it's because the control of that character is so passive that when I do get stunned, it's like, oh, whatever. And it's kind of intense because you're like spamming clicks to, as soon as you get out of that stun, to move away or whatever. But in Overwatch, I don't know. Like, I think there's something to be, I think as the game comes out and we get sort of deeper into it and more intimate with it, I think there's a discussion to be had that a lot of the characters in Overwatch are super fun to play, but a lot of them are also not that much fun to play against. And I think it's going to take some time. Like, it's just sort of interesting right now because everything's kind of up in the air. We're going to have to wait for the dust to settle and the meta to kind of cement before we can really dig into it. But yeah, I don't know if you guys feel similar at all, but...
No, I think that's a fair point. McCree is a very, I mean, you wanted to bring him up as well. He's a weirdly oppressive character because he's so good at range and so good up close. He can basically duel anyone with that stun.
And you're seeing used a lot at high level play.
Yeah. He's just really, really powerful overall. He's such a tank killer too with the right click. You stun him, you right click, you dash to refill your ammo, and then you right click again. And I don't think that anyone can survive that pretty much. One of the things people were saying was how his flashbang, it just doesn't make any sense thematically. Like, why does a cowboy have a stunning flashbang? Like, what even is that? It just feels very strange. But also, that's kind of his only real ability. His dash is kind of just a reload. You never really use it to dodge. Yeah. And then he just has a gun. I'm fine playing against McCree, but as May, I literally just turn the other direction and run when I see him. I've only ever dueled and won against one McCree ever in my time playing the game. I agree, though, Steven. I think there are people who are not very fun to play against, but are incredibly fun to play. Lucio, even, or Winston's ult, the big knockback moves on the, especially on the control point maps, which have a lot of pits. It just isn't a fun way to die. It's a lot of fun to knock someone into a pit, and you have to be strategic about it. It's not like it's a skill-less thing, but it's just kind of like oh great, he left clicked me and I fell off a hole. It's just like a weird thing. I'm interested to see how much that fatigues me as I play more.
Yeah, it's funny because like it really is so dependent on what character you're playing, because like getting knocked into the pits isn't that fun. But I will totally say that anytime Roadhog chains, there's that one map, Ilios, I think it is. There's one of the control points, and it has the big well in the middle. And it's a real common strategy for someone to play Roadhog and then chain grab people, chain hook people, and it pulls them into that pit, and then it just drops them there. And you just drop people into the pit over and over and over again. And every time that gets me, I can't even be mad. I'm just like, that's hilarious. Like, you did it. But getting knocked off can be really... It can have these awesome, like some of my favorite moments are getting knocked off the map and then making a comeback. Like there was one time as Lucio, I did that and I was able to wall ride up 2 perpendicular walls and just get enough verticality to escape the pit that I fell out of. Or, moments with Mercy where you can save yourself that are like so exhilarating and fun. But yeah, like there's some heroes where they trigger their ability and you just basically turn the other way and be like, okay, I'm not going to engage with this character until that ability is over, like their ultimate or whatever.
Yeah, High Noon is almost like a zoning tool at a certain point. It's not even if it doesn't kill anybody, it just makes everyone stop and hide.
Clears them out. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of, oh, sorry, go ahead, Evan.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm enjoying like seeing all these conversations online about all these characters. I think it's really fun and healthy for the game for people to talk about what they think is overpowered, underpowered, whatever. Like, yeah. But ultimately, like, I do want it to be focused on is something fun. Like if you're asking Blizzard to balance 21 characters across all modes, all maps, all situations, good luck. and not only that, I think the notion of a tier list is absolutely something this game should probably aspire to. I like the idea of the tiers changing over time, or suddenly, for whatever reason, maybe Bastion is now top tier. They've reconfigured him in some way. They've changed other characters to, complement that, make him more interesting. But like, I think that's probably what Overwatch is headed toward, rather than TF2, where like all the characters kind of exist on a relatively level playing field with complementary ideas and tactics that have equal importance in different ways in different situations. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a game about fighting, more about than like synergy necessarily, I think.
Yeah, for me, it's a game I already know I enjoy. Like, I'm having a lot of fun playing it. And, And it's really going to come down to their long-term support of the game, like you said. I'm just curious to see what they do with it. I'm curious to see how much they update, how often they update, how much they listen to feedback like this. You know, if that ranked play update in June comes with nerfs, that'd be really interesting to see who they go after, what they've changed. You know, obviously, even better than nerfs, changes, right? Reworks on certain things. I would not be sad if they just completely changed Bastion's heal ability into something else. Even if that something else was stronger, I'd be fine with it, as long as that was a more interesting thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, what they do over the next 6 months, I mean, the rest of the year really is going to be very interesting. I'm just super interested to hear what that first announcement and sort of pledge that they make to the game's future is, because, you know, you look at Heroes of the Storm, they have updated that game like clockwork every 3 to 4 weeks with a new character. They've added new maps and a bunch of other stuff. But they've done that for a solid year now. Yeah. Every 3 to 4 weeks. And yeah, like, you know, if you play League of Legends, you're used to that kind of treatment, I guess. But it takes a big commitment, especially when you're like maybe the third MOBA on that totem pole, to put 150 people on a project. And Blizzard claims they have, you know, millions of active players for Heroes. That's something that they've quoted themselves recently, but that's a massive commitment. I would expect them to at least make that level of commitment equivalently, not like a character every 3 to 4 weeks in Overwatch. I think that's probably ridiculous, but something equivalent and that consistent. And I don't think, real quick, just as a final point, I don't think they're going for a 3 to 4 weeks every 3 to 4 weeks a hero. No. I think they want to keep this a tight-knit community. Maybe I'm naive, but I believed them when they said we don't know if we're going to add new heroes yet. Mm-hmm. I think that is a genuine question with a game like this, because if you get too many, it can be even more difficult. But Steven, unless you have one last word, I'm going to derail this Overwatch train.
Switch it.
So let's move on to Halo 5 Forge. Also, Seamus Green in the chat says, the most balance Blizzard has found is in their bank. Heyo!
Oh, wow.
What?
Wow.
Damn.
It's, to be fair, the game's probably selling like hotcakes, man. It was on Jimmy Kimmel. It was on Conan. Like, they're pushing it hard to the mainstream.
I do think it's really awesome, though, that like Blizzard, because I mean, this is the first like original IP they've had since like, what would that be, StarCraft? I think it is kind of interesting to see that like they can still get everyone whipped up into a frenzy. I mean,
all you need to do is make a super failed MMO, and then it will produce an excellent FPS.
There we go. That's the formula, people. Go recreate it for yourself. We're moving on. Halo 5. Who doesn't want to talk about Halo 5? I'm okay not talking about Halo 5. Oh. But Forge is really interesting to me. So for those of you who didn't hear, Halo 5, if you don't know already, which you might not, Halo has this engine called Forge, where it's basically
It's like Snap Map.
It's like a better Snap Map, though.
Yes.
It's a more adaptable Snap Map. It lets you create custom levels, custom game modes, change physics around, you know, add new things in. But it's always been console, of course, because it's Halo. So it never had that, like a super, super deep level of customizability. And it also had console controls, which, you know, depending on who you talk to, could be better or worse. Microsoft is bringing Halo 5's Forge editor to Windows 10 to be playable on Windows 10 so that you can make levels for Halo 5 and then publish them for Xbox One users.
We've become their slaves, Tom.
This is like a we will never be slaves, like Warlords of Draenor moment here.
I don't know. I don't think I actually feel that way. It's just funny to sort of frame it that way. You know,
yeah,
I mean, just
it is.
Without getting ahead of ourselves, I mean, I think we're all aware of the history of Halo on PC. You know, back in the Vista days, Halo 2 multiplayer.
Oh, that hurts.
Vista
days
was only playable, I think, on Vista. It was like sort of an exclusive through that.
I think I had almost successfully blocked Vista out of my mind until we just had this conversation.
My bad.
Damn it,
okay.
Evan! Come on, he was so close to recovery.
I was so close.
But it just sort of feeds in this long history of Halo being dangled in front of PC gamers. Like, oh, you want this? Oh, sorry. Like, we're going to use this to sell Xbox, which I think is a totally valid strategy. Like, you need that kind of big flagship game to sell a console. You need a mascot.
And I mean, you saw how angry Microsoft and Xbox players got when Quantum Break got announced for PC. They were all like, you said this was exclusive. And to be fair, I totally understand that outrage, because if I bought an Xbox being like, I want this because there are these things that I can only get on Xbox, and then suddenly I could get them on PC, I'd probably be mad too. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. So part of that is that you can test the maps you make on PC, and you can test them with friends on PC, and you can test maps that you've downloaded from the store that other people have made, and you could like modify. So conceivably, we could all download Halo 5 Forge, download a map from the store that we wanted to modify, quote unquote, test it together in a multiplayer server, quote unquote, and then just be playing Halo 5 on PC with mouse and keyboard controls. And the thing that drives me crazy about this is if they're literally making us able to play Halo 5 on the PC.
So close.
Why won't they let us play Halo 5 on the PC? Like, why?
It'll update. I mean, it will upset a lot of their console players. I don't know. I don't know what the rationale is. I can't get in Microsoft's collective heads. That's a difficult and futile exercise.
Maybe they're stuck between this, like, they're stuck between worlds. It's this love triangle that they can't get out of, where they've committed to restoring their fate, like committed to the PC, but they're committed to the Xbox. And so they're trying to serve both, and they're just making real awkward decisions. I don't know. Yeah, you can't get in their heads. It's a weird thing.
I mean, on paper, we shouldn't be shaking our heads at something new.
No.
That we can all play with.
Yeah, it is cool.
That's awesome. But yeah, the optics of it are like, okay, you're gonna get the version of the thing that is sort of, vestigial to the core experience of the game, and you're gonna be making content for the existing players on console. That is strange and uncomfortable,
Yeah. It's just odd. Real quickly,
so
by
thanks.
the way. Thanks. Yeah. Real quickly, Borrowed Time TM just resubscribed for the third month in a row on Twitch, so thank you very much for that. But yeah, it is like it's a very strange thing, and it's a strange thing that I guess we should just be happy about and let Microsoft be Microsoft, or I don't know. I'm glad it's coming. I'm definitely going to jump in and try it, because I think they said it was going to be free as well. Mm-hmm. I'm going to jump into Forge and try it. I've only ever played the first Halo. I never played any of the other Halo games.
For all we know, this is laying the groundwork for an actual release of the next Halo game or Halo 5.
Right,
on
maybe.
PC, or a remaster or something. I don't know.
I believe their official statement when asked about that was, we're excited to be developing Halo Wars 2 for the PC, and then they said that Halo 5 was still not coming to PC. But it just seems like such a weird, selfish, trying to have their cake and eat it too sort of thing to do. I don't know. Did you play many of the Halo games, Steven?
Yeah, I've played them all. I think, yeah, it's weird. What I think is kind of weird is, why would you go to the effort of creating? Because, I'm not a developer, but conceivably, I think it would be fair to say that if they're porting the Forge part over, that the whole engine then is running on PC. So to go to that effort to divert the resources to doing that, and then to not just put Halo 5 on PC and then just charge full price for it and get recuperate your costs back. Why would you not just do that?
Do you think this is Microsoft kind of painting themselves into a corner with a strategy, and then deciding later that they wanted to do a different strategy? Do you think this is them saying, we're going to go really hard into Xbox One exclusivity, and then somewhere along the line being like, man, we maybe shouldn't have done this, let's start to ease back?
Yeah, it absolutely, in a way, feeds into this narrative and their existing mission around cross connectivity between Windows 10 and Xbox One, and the Xbox One becoming more of a Windows platform. Absolutely feeds into that. We're literally providing content for another ecosystem, But yeah, it certainly ignores some of the history
It does. It's just so teasy, man.
Yeah.
So my question is, how long until, like Halo Online, that was that Russian one of Halo 3, I think, that then got pirated and became just Halo 3 Online if you want to play it. How long until someone cracks Halo 5 Forged, just make a server for it and just be Halo 5, at least the multiplayer?
That's a good point.
That's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I'll give it like 5 days. At the rate these things happen, yeah.
I can't imagine it taking very long, but maybe
What if people like crack open the game files and the whole Halo 5 campaign is just in the files and they just release that?
Well, this is the thing with UWP, the Universal Windows Platform, is you can't even access the files. So maybe this won't work very well because people opened when Quantum Break came out for Windows 10, everyone was like, I can't change any of the settings files, I can't look at any of these folders or anything like that. So maybe this is a situation where that just won't happen because of the UWP, and Microsoft will get their way with that.
That's probably fair, yeah.
It's strange. I mean, I'm, like you said, Evan, I'm happy Halo 5 Forge is coming to PC. I think that's cool. It just feels very backhanded to be like, hey guys, you can play Halo 5 Forge on PC and publish to the Xbox One but not PC. Sorry. Like, it just seems super strange to do that.
We should end there. That was perfect.
Okay. Well, let's jump along then. I want to talk about Total War. So Total War Warhammer just came out.
Say it 10 times fast.
I don't know if I can. Total War Warhammer?
Wodel Tor Warhammer? Well,
one of those. How much Total War?
Total Warhammer.
How much Total War could a Warhammer chuck if a Warhammer could chuck Total War?
Yes.
Something like that.
You did it.
I did it.
We're all real proud.
Yeah, and bored. But yeah, it came out. I know Evan and I haven't personally played it. Steven, have you?
Nope.
Okay, so this is gonna be a great conversation. No, but I do want to bring it out. We have a great review on the site if you go to pcgamer.com/total-war-warhammer. You'll find all our coverage there. We have a beginner's guide all about the lore of the world in the game. We also have a beginner's guide of how if you want to play the game.
Yeah, we try to get our reviewer, Tom Senior, on the show today to talk about it, but hopefully we can do that next week or sometime in early June. He's over in the UK, so it's kind of tough to get him to call in late in the day. But yeah, he was super positive on it. I think one of the things we're also working on right now is a technical evaluation of the game, talking to our graphics card reviewer / senior editor, Jared Walton. He says that the game is a little bit CPU intensive, which is not surprising at all. I think don't run this in an i3 if you don't have to. It's probably a pretty obvious thing to say, but yeah.
But an interesting point to make, and a big one for within the Total War community, people who love those games. This was an incredibly successful launch, performance-wise. I've heard people say that they've had, a crash here or there, but generally the trend has been like every other Total War game that came out has been buggy and unplayable on launch.
Almost on the level of Fallout games, I think. That's sort of the reputation that they've gained. But yeah, people reporting good frame rates at or around 60 with kind of the equipment you'd expect, seemingly.
I saw a lot of the people in the comments of PCGamer.com saying, they've been playing for 8 to 10 hours with absolutely no crashes, absolutely no problems. What do you, is this just what we have to be happy about now? Are there just so many buggy launches that when a game comes out, it's like it's headline news that this game is just functional? It's strange, right?
Well, I mean, Overwatch obviously launched pretty well. I don't know. I feel like it's more that the failures are so high profile, and
yeah,
people write about them a lot, including us, because they are super newsworthy and interesting, and people want access to the game, and it's. They paid for it. They have a right to get in there, arguably. Those really stick in our minds, and they've kind of become memes in and of themselves. Era 37, obviously, is a big one for Diablo, SimCity.
Era 37 became meme status. That's a huge one.
But I don't know. I guess we could do an examination or investigation of that. I feel like most high-profile games launch without major issues. That seems fair to say.
Yeah. The ones that you remember are the bad ones, which is why you remember them.
Yeah,
but
Battlefield,
Batman, SimCity. I actually forgot how ridiculous the SimCity launch was.
It was super bad.
Yeah, it tragically closed a studio. It was so bad
on a number of levels. Yeah, really unfortunate.
Oh.
But Total War, the thing I'm really interested in about the new Total War, because I've been watching and reading a lot about it. I've read through our review, and one of the things that I'm really excited to try out with it is that Jody McGregor, a reviewer for it, was talking about how every faction, there are 4 playable races within the game, is like its own thing. It's not just like a faction where, these people have better use of missile weapons while these people have better use of swords. It's not like that. It's like the thing he was saying is that the greenskins, which are basically just the orcs within the Warhammer universe, have a ability where the bigger their army is and the more that they've been killing and attacking people, they get bonuses in their attack, they get extra money. So Jody was just attacking people without even really thinking about the consequences of it, just because it's what they needed to do, which is a very orky thing to do, right? Yeah. Where meanwhile, the dwarves are all about like holding grudges, and when somebody slights you, your people expect you to retaliate in some way. And if you get too many people slighting you and you can't attack them all, they'll lose faith in you for like not being able to make up respond to those grudges that you're holding. So the dwarves then ended up playing very, turtle, right? You hide in your base, you kill the people that are your enemies before you go make new ones and stuff like that. And I think that's cool. That's something that at least I haven't really seen yet in the Total War series, where you could always choose to play those ways. You could always say, I'm going to play this game very turtly, or I'm going to play this game just warlord, run over everyone, Attila style, in the case of Attila. And it's interesting that those are now condensed into specific classes, and when you play through the campaign as those, or excuse me, not classes, races, and when you play through the campaign as those different races, it has a significant effect. Jody actually said that it felt like basically just different games in a certain way, different Total War games. A question I have for you guys is, how big of a deal is magic in a military game? Because this is like something that we're looking at too with chivalry, medieval warfare getting Mirage arcane warfare, where we're starting to see this trend of otherwise historical games going weirder in a certain way. And Warhammer is a little bit of an exception in that it's this established IP and it's been around for a while. But like, how much do you guys think magic changes either in theme or gameplay, like what is otherwise a classic medieval or military style game?
Gosh, it's a good question. I tend to gravitate toward more martial games, like games that are absent of magic. I think there's a kind of interesting nobility, I guess, in the notion that every man, every kind of character, creature, whatever, is sort of bound by the same rules. They have to compete for the same kind of resources on those rules, and it's about like their individual skill or something. Even if it's like a big strategy game, I think there's like an interesting idea behind that I gravitate toward. But yeah, at the same time, like magic, I don't know, like what is its function? I guess what fun does it add? Kind of in the same sense we were talking about Overwatch, like what does it contribute and make more interesting relative to the other systems of the game? That's kind of the key question, I guess.
Yeah. Because at a certain point, if you don't make it unique enough, it just becomes like a different colored gun, right? Like if
like a series of atom bombs, basically.
Yeah, I guess so.
Just a nuke. Yeah, it's interesting watching what happened with Total War, because when it was first demoed, the magic in that game seemed incredibly powerful and like devastating when it was used, and then it came out, and almost everyone was like, "Oh, magic is actually not that useful in the game. It's kind of like." Yeah, you just call down some spells and, it just does like the same amount of damage that any other unit would do to another unit. Like it's not, I almost found that a bit disappointing that they couldn't have figured out a system where magic could still be this huge set piece of fare, but not just make it sort of, an ultimatum or just like a win button where you're just like, oh, I cast this meteor and now their enemy forces are scattered. So Yeah, I don't know how I feel about Magic in martial games or in these type of military games. I think it can be interesting, but lots of times I feel like it's just fireballs dressed up, or like bullets dressed up as fireballs, or arrows dressed up as fireballs. Like, it doesn't really do anything that unique. It's interesting though, because I feel like a lot of like video games have a problem where Magic is always like super combative. Like, it's always meant to like harm another person. I'd like to see games experiment more with Magic that has more utility, like, I don't know, teleportation or things like that, which you don't see in a lot of games. Usually it's, you know, hurling fireballs.
Yeah, and I guess it does make a huge thematic difference, though, doesn't it? There are people where you could take literally the same exact game, except one version of it you're shooting bullets and one version of it you're throwing fireballs, and it's exact same functionality, exact same balance and numbers, but you know, one person's pirates or soldiers and the other is mages, and there are going to be people who will absolutely want to play one and not the other.
Yeah.
For both sides.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think it becomes a different fantasy at that point.
It does.
When you're operating a gun, say, I mean, it's sort of, you know, it's about marksmanship in a way. I have trouble associating spells with marksmanship and like accuracy and precision and headshots and stuff like that. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Mirage, just to jump back to Mirage Arcane Warfare, which we've both played now, I think. Steven, did you get a chance to play that at all at GDC?
No, but it looks fun.
Yeah,
I haven't played it though.
It's interesting. I feel like they do a similar thing to what you were talking about, though, of I wish that there were more utility spells. You know, you only have to look at a MOBA to really know what like a utility spell will look like, and you have things like teleports, you have things like shields and stuff that would be pretty cool to put into like military games like this. But I don't know, maybe that stuff is there. I know as zombies, or excuse me, as the vampires, you can like raise the dead and call up zombie armies, but even that doesn't work exactly how like raise the dead works in other games. It's not like you're actually resurrecting dead things. You're basically just like placing another unit of troops on the map. Which is a little bit of a disappointing implementation of it, but at the same time, the fact that there are giants and spells and mages and stuff in Total War Warhammer makes me want to play the game more than something like Rome or Attila or anything like that.
And you got to think it's got to be a good creative exercise for that team who's been creating historical games for quite some time.
Yeah. Well, let's jump along because I'm excited by Total War, but I'm also excited to actually be playing it. I know that I want to, and hopefully I'll be talking about it a little more depth in a Now Playing coming up in another show. But let's talk about Oculus. Oculus Rift had some rocky roads this last week. Basically, to catch anybody up on the situation, somebody came up with this program called Revive that allows you to play Oculus, what were called Oculus exclusives, exclusive to the Oculus Rift store, on the Vive and other headsets, assumedly, but the Vive for now. For the record, I used this. I tried it. I reviewed Lucky's Tale for us, so I had a lot of experience in Lucky's Tale. I played Lucky's Tale on a Vive instead of a Rift to try it out after having reviewed it, and it's not quite the same experience. It was a little wonky, it was a little laggy, it was a little strange, but it was totally playable if you wanted to play it. And the key thing here is the game didn't like run an executable or anything. You had to buy the game from the store, and then you would load it with your Vive in this program. That was a big thing. The creator actually said, I don't want to support piracy, I don't want to crack anything, you have to get the game still. Then, about a month after that came out, Oculus just recently put out a patch to their software that added a certain level of DRM to it. Basically, what it did is it made the program running the Oculus store check if an Oculus Rift was attached before it let you launch a game. And that was their DRM. That was all they did. They didn't do any sort of, sign this thing, always online sort of stuff, the way that like Ubisoft or Uplay or Origin does. They just made it so that the games played from the Oculus store double-checked to make sure there was a Rift plugged in. And this was kind of weird to everybody because Palmer Luckey 5 months ago in a Reddit AMA said very publicly, I don't care if you guys mod the games to run on any headset. Why would I want to limit that? Do whatever you want. Just they're exclusive to this store unless Valve works with us. And then they did this, and they claim that it wasn't specifically targeted at the Revive program. It was just a thing that happened. And of course, within a day, the creator of Revive had already broken it open and gotten around that limitation. And not only had they gotten around that limitation, the way that they had to do it opened the door to easily pirating Oculus Rift games. And he said, I really don't want to do this. I hate that it has to happen this way, but I want this program to still work. Don't pirate games. But unfortunately, lets them happen. Lets that happen. So, like, it's this whole big quagmire of Oculus said that this would be okay. Somebody did it. Then a month later, they broke that functionality to make their games less piratable, and it caused someone to make their games more piratable. So it's just this huge thing, and I want to know what you guys think about it.
Well, it's certainly an unfortunate speed bump for VR.
Yeah.
As it's, starting out. It's really, this is the first era of new VR. And it's encountering stuff like this, which is really tricky. I mean, there's sort of been this, like, gray conversation, like you were alluding to with Palmer Luckey talking about how open VR is going to be and how, exclusivity is going to work and stuff like that. I think it's been very uncertain up until now. We're starting to get a sense of what that future might look like. I mean, these companies are competing as much as they have been friendly with one another in some, like, really positive ways, I think, that are healthy for VR as a sub-platform in PC gaming. Ultimately, one of these guys is probably going to win, at least in the PC gaming space. I don't think that's necessarily good for us. I think competition is great, but, if we look over the history of these types of technologies, a lot of people compare, of course, VR to the VHS, Betamax type kind of war in the 80s, I guess, and we all kind of know how that turned out. But it is unfortunate. We certainly don't advocate for piracy as PC gamers, and but at the same time, we want stuff to be as open as possible. We think that's the spirit of the platform. That's why we're PC gamers.
And for the record, anybody who has a Vive or a different headset out there who wants to use this program to play Oculus Store games, you can still buy the game and use the program. You don't have to pirate it. Don't pirate it if you want to play these games.
Right. And it only works on Unreal games right now.
Oh, yeah. It's not all games yet.
Yeah. Unity games are going to be added, he said, pretty soon. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's really unfortunate. I think I'm honestly a bit disappointed that Oculus chose this hill to die on, because they've obviously just made the situation much worse for themselves, even just from a PR standpoint, because now this has created this big stir and all the big, media websites have now covered it. And it doesn't look great any way you look at it, but I think Oculus stands to lose much more in this sort of like battle, quote unquote, with this guy than he does necessarily. So yeah, it's sort of this messy, gross situation.
It really is. I mean, that's a good way to put it about that, why they chose this hill to die on. I like that a lot. I mean, like, it's just such a weird thing. And as somebody who, if I was a person who had a Vive, heard about this program in the month that it has been out, bought Lucky's Tale, and then because Oculus, the founder of Oculus and the CEO, had said publicly, we don't mind if you do this, and I bought Lucky's Tale to support them, and then suddenly they broke it, I'd be pissed.
Yeah, it's really tough, right? Because in one sense, if you get in Oculus's shoes, you're like, they have a responsibility to protect their platform. From a legal perspective, perhaps, and to their shareholders or whatever, if you want to go in that direction. But at the same time, VR is so young and kind of so, I don't want to say fragile. That's probably the wrong word. But it is developing, and evangelism matters. And the people who are passionate about VR are going to be the ones that help other people get passionate about VR. And cutting them off from having certain experiences, like, yes, okay, you should buy the extra hardware, I guess. It's super expensive in order to have those experiences. But, like, that's only going to diminish the effectiveness ultimately, and, like, its ability to spread and reach more people as a platform.
Yeah, it just seems weird to me too, because like you said, Tom, like it didn't even work amazingly well. Like, it wasn't a one-to-one experience. It was, slightly like it was in, like, would it be fair to say you felt it was inferior playing Lucky's Tale on a Vive?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So like, it just seems so weird that they chose to, plant their flag in the ground right there when it was like, this was a program that, like, was it really that big of a, well, I guess, like, I don't know what it's like for them. Like, it could have been a big threat. Who knows? Like, the things it was doing could have opened doors that were much more serious.
I wonder if they were worried at all about the representation of that. Like, because if you bought Lucky's Tale and played it on a Vive with Revive, you would think less of that game if you had never played it on a Rift, right?
That's a good point.
But I wonder how big that population is, how many people would have the know-how to, and the know-how and like what kind of person buys a Vive, hears about Revive, downloads it, reads all the things associated with it, buys a game on the Oculus Home Store, which you have to do separately by downloading the home, like, in a different program, and then, like, even now, it, like, has to, like, crack Revive in the home store to let him run it on Vive, and then plays Lucky's Tale and is like, this isn't that good of a game because it's kind of laggy. It's like, you'd know at that point that
Right.
was not the game's fault.
You'd be cognizant of what's going on. Like,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
I don't know. It's just a messy situation, man.
It is.
It goes to show, I feel like, just at the end of the day, if you make your games easy for people to buy, like GOG does, and you make it this wonderful, simple process, people will happily pay you money, and they will play it on whatever platform they choose. And if you make it difficult and try to, tend to your closed garden, like, it can bite you in the butt in a big way.
Yeah, that's just true across, like, all technological services too. I mean, like, you look at Spotify, Netflix, like, systems where even if you have to pay, but if you just make it, like, easy and simple and just a quick process, like, people flock to that. I'm curious to know, like, I don't know how I feel about his statement, Libra VR, the developer of Revive, his statement saying, like, I didn't want to do this, but you're forcing my hand, so I'm going to enable piracy.
It's a little strange.
I feel really icky about that situation. Like, Evan, I think you made a good point where people want the spirit of the platform to be open, and so there's that emotional appeal there. But at the same time, I'm like, that's like robbing someone and then being like, oh man, I don't want to do this, and, like, putting the gun up to their head, like, don't make me shoot you. And you're like, no, like, I'm not making you shoot me. You're shooting me. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a weird thing to do. Like, if you didn't want to support piracy, you should have just been like, I can't do this without supporting piracy. Sorry.
Yeah. Like, oh man, I'm totally aware of this, like, really, like, unlikable bad side effect of the thing I'm about to do, but I feel really compelled to do it anyway, even though I'm super aware of the consequences.
Twisting my arm, Oculus, come on. It's real strange to me that he said that, and it's not like he has an or like a financial stake. It's not like this is a product that he was selling, and it's like his livelihood is attached to this. This is, by the looks of things, something that was kind of just seems like a side project or some program he developed, and it took him a month to do it or whatever. Like, I don't get. I feel I don't buy into his reasoning. I don't think it's okay.
All right, let's open this up. Let's open up the discussion to Twitch chat. If you have any questions for us about Oculus DRM, Total War, Halo 5, Forge, Overwatch, anything we talked about today, Evan wants to talk about Overwatch more. If you have any of those questions, please tag us with @PCGamer in the chat and let us know if you're a subscriber on Twitch chat. Welcome. We always love having you here, and we will definitely get to your questions if we can manage. And if you are listening on iTunes or at PCGamer.com, PodTrack, wherever you may be listening or watching on YouTube after the fact at youtube.com/PCGamer, you're always welcome to join us on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time. You can come on over to the chat and ask your questions live, and then you'll be able to listen to it later and be like, oh man, that was my question, and it'll be a lovely little circle. And of course, if you have any comments or feedback for us, you're always welcome to go to PCGamer.com/podcast, click on this week's episode, go down to the discuss comments below, and let us know if you like us, if you hate us, if there's something you do or don't like that we're doing or want us to do more of. Please let us know. BattleTank09 says, I ask this every week. Since Evan, you're on this week, I'll put it through to you. Will you guys ever bring back Saturday Crapshoot?
Oh, yeah, and that was the terrific retro column that a guy named Richard Cobbett, who's a fabulous writer that we still give some great work to, adventure game specialist. He's over in the UK. Appears in the magazine pretty frequently, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's tough with some of the columns and some of the kind of regulars, as we call them, on the site. Like, they just kind of live out their life. I think we ran Crapshoot for years, if I'm not mistaken. So that's great feedback. Like, we're always kind of trying to get a sense of what's most exciting to folks on the site. So that's absolutely heard and absorbed. We don't have plans to bring it back right now, but I think there's no reason why we wouldn't explore that in the future.
Is there an archive for that? Is that Crapshoot, pcgamer.com/crapshoot?
I don't know.
Darn.
I'd have to go back and look because it has been a year or so since it ran, and we've since switched over to different platforms of the website.
Yeah, they are. You should be able to find them, though, if you do Google, like, pcgamer.com. Saturday Crapshoot. He's got a lot in there.
Yeah, and we do what's called reinstall that appears in the magazine and on the website. We're reflecting backward on games. It's not always games that are terrible, which is what Crapshoot was about. But thanks for bringing that up. I really enjoy that column too.
Subscriber Chris86 asks, any quick impressions on Witcher 3 DLC?
Oh man, well we got the review up on the website.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a crazy time right now before E3 that like we're all kind of playing different stuff. Most of us in the U.S. office are playing Overwatch because that's the most recent thing. I'm still wrapping up Doom. So we kind of let our guy, Tom Sr., play the Witcher 3 DLC. He loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, he really liked it.
If I remember correctly, he said like the main campaign, solid 10 hours if you just do that, and then like legitimately 30 if you do side questy stuff and you're kind of trying to hit everything. So that's
just like a game.
It's $20. I mean, that's super encouraging. You know, does anybody have a better reputation right now than CD Projekt? I don't know.
They can do what they want.
Yeah,
like that launch trailer with that awful rock song in the background. I don't know if you guys listened to that.
Oh, no.
Oh.
They got away with it, though.
Yeah, they can do it. They're CD Projekt Red. Of course, they can have a Witcher 3 trailer with what was the name of that band? Anyway, some metal band in the background, but it's like whatever. Who cares?
I like the theme of it a lot. The like Italy kind of Italian sort of feel with the wine and Blood and Wine. His name as you might assume from Italy, or the other way around. Excuse me. Let's see. Panzer asks, what are your plans for E3, more specifically for the PC Gamer Show? Are you talking PC Gaming Show?
Oh, no.
Because now we have brand mix-ups here. We didn't plan this well.
Messaging, marketing. Yeah, so E3, hey, we're going to be covering E3 as we have for, PC Gamer's entire existence, I think.
Pretty much.
So look forward to that. I think early June, we're certainly going to have some kind of article on the site that talks about what we expect and kind of our speculation about what we're going to see and what might happen at certain news, press conferences and stuff like that. The PC Gaming Show, yes, is an event that we're hosting. It's like a PC gaming press conference, kind of, sort of, but also more so a celebration of the PC gaming platform because gosh darn it, the PC deserves that at E3. And we kind of continue to feel that way. So, yeah, PC Gaming Show is going to be kind of a collection of new announcements, new trailers, footage for existing stuff that you haven't seen before, some cool faces on stage that you might want to see. So tune in. It's 11:30 Pacific on Monday, June 13th, right after Microsoft. So Microsoft into PC Gaming into Ubisoft on that Monday. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, and if anybody watched last year, that was our first year. And it's going to be similar to that. We learned a lot of really good things from last year, though, and I think it'll be even better this year.
Man, putting on a live, we instantly gain respect for, Microsoft and everybody else who puts those shows on every year. It's an immense effort. I mean, we're spending a crazy amount of money to put this thing together and employing tons of crazy professionals who know how to operate cameras and lights and all that kind of stuff. We have an awesome venue, this old theater, 1920s theater in Los Angeles. So I'm super pumped, and it's basically what I'm spending my time doing for the next 3 weeks before E3. Oh, my God.
Real quickly, because Dowie asks us every week, any news on the RSS feed? Yes, it's actually hopefully going to get fixed very, very soon this time.
I thought it has been fixed.
Oh, has it?
Right?
It's either fixed or in the progress of being fixed, but yes. There is news, and it's good news.
Someone asked in our Slack channel, is it working? Can you check? And I thought somebody replied, yeah.
Oh,
I thought that was you. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Anyway, it's very, very close.
I'll double check after this, but I'm pretty sure it's working.
There's a really good question from Seamus Green asking, do you think a community is an important factor, or not a community, do you think community is an important factor to consider when buying a multiplayer game? When I'm buying a new multiplayer game, I don't just look up reviews, but I also check how big the player base is and how they interact. I think that's huge. I think it's also one of those harder ones to nail down, though.
Yeah, for me, I play a lot of MMOs, and so community is like a big part of those games. And it's interesting. I feel like a lot of reviews that I'm reading nowadays are getting really good at just almost reviewing the community in a way. I hesitate to say that, but I think it's a huge important part of the game, and it's interesting because games. The way a game is developed and created will inform the community that ends up playing it. Like EVE Online is obviously famous for being a community of cutthroats who will take everything you own and then laugh in your face on the way out. And I mean, not everyone in EVE is like that, but someone who's played that game, it is true. Like there are people in that game who are ruthless because EVE allows for it. So yeah, I think it's hugely important. I think that's something where, sometimes Steam reviews can actually be really helpful because people will talk about things that are going on in the community if there's sort of a toxicity there or something you want to avoid. I wish that there was a way to kind of dig into that issue better.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially with an MMO, it's hugely important. But I mean, we talked about this. I think it was last week or the week before about how Warframe also is a cool game. But one of the best things about it is that it's got such a good community because it's such a PvE focused game. Like everybody just wants to help each other. And I did an interview or wrote a piece about Warframe, and it got posted to the Warframe subreddit, and then somebody in the Warframe subreddit was like, you seem to know what you're talking about and actually play this game. If you need any help learning, like come join me. I'll give you stuff and equipment and items. And I was like, wow, that's so friendly, Like usually I just get raged on for wearing a bow tie when I'm posting something on PC Gamer.
I think it's tough too because ultimately communities are distilled through individual experiences we have with people, and it's really hard to talk about a community in broad strokes without stereotyping. And so when a community maybe is sort of a more negative community, you don't necessarily it's hard as for me as like a writer. Like I don't want to write an article bashing a community because ultimately what that boils down to is I just had a few negative experiences, and that's not a complete take, and it's almost impossible to get sort of a complete census of every person in the community and whether or not they're like a good person or like positively contributing to that community. So it's a tough issue.
Yeah. I'm glad we have you on to talk about it because, gosh, you out of anybody, as an MMO expert, struggle with this issue where communities are these subcultures of games, and they're there, they exist, they change, they have history. Systems enable or discourage certain behaviors, and you can't ignore that. But at the same time, generalizations.
Yeah. Well, I think we are just about out of time. I'm sorry to anybody whose questions I couldn't take, but you're always welcome to ask them again if you'd like next week. Thank you, Evan, for joining me. Steven, as always, we love having you on. Aww. Hugging a monitor. That's what normal people do.
That's what PC gamers do.
I guess so.
I love my monitor
all the time.
I love that
whenever I get home, I just hug my computer for a few minutes. Like I missed you, especially from vacations, man. Whenever I get back from vacation, did you just turn me off?
You did just turn him off.
Why would I do that?
Oh man, Evan,
I'm
party
done.
foul.
The power button's on the back. Who does that?
Well, we can. Steven, you are back, but we are leaving now.
I'm sorry.
So thank you very much, everyone, for watching or listening or whatever you are doing to hear us and consume the ideas that we are spitting out right now.
Engage with our hashtag content.
Oh, God. We started on clickbait titles and we ended on hashtags. I think that's a good full circle we did. But thank you very much, everyone.
Next week we'll talk about why you should never use the word content.
Yes, there we go. But thanks very much. We'll see you all next week, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, right here at twitch.tv/PCGamer. Bye, guys.
Bye.